Canary by Cloud 9 and 3/4. Chapter 19. Confrontation. After leaving Todoroki, Midoriya hurried straight back down the stairs, ran all the way to his designated waiting room, and proceeded to pace in circles, staring at the ground beneath his feet blankly as his mind raced. Selectively mute. The class turned and stared at him, and Midoriya sunk further into his desk, bile rising up the back of his throat as his shoulders began to shake. Whatever words further droned from his teacher's mouth fell short of Midoriya's ears. All he could hear was a ringing noise, like the sound which reverberated around him when Kacchan used his quirk. Boom! There it was. "Hey, what the heck did he mean by that?" Kacchan yelled. So loud. Always so loud. And not a good kind of loud either. Not like All Might. Not like Present Mike on the radio. This was a scary loud. The teacher had gone now, Midoriya realized. How long had he been gone? How long had he been sitting there lost to the mess that his mind had become? "How can you be selectively mute?" scoffed one of those blank-faced people who never told him their name. There were too many names on the register, and why would Midoriya cast any of them to memory if not all bothered doing the same to his? "So what, you just choose not to talk to certain people?" frowned another. "In which case, I like to be selectively mute too." They laughed. Not funny. Really. Not funny. Basically, he just doesn't want to talk to us. How on earth do you think he managed to get a doctor's note for it? Why were they talking like he wasn't there? "It's just pathetic, Deku," snarled Kacchan. "But you think you're above us all, huh? Too smart to be associated with losers like these." "Hey, Kutsuki, watch your mouth!" "Yeah, at least Midoriya's got the decency not to insult us to our faces." "All right, he can't. Remember, he doesn't want to even speak to us." "I'm getting into UA's hero course, and even if you get into general studies, you'll be eating my dust while I become the #1 hero, and you'll be left in the gutter," Kacchan told him, tossing his books on the floor. Midoriya scrambled off his chair to retrieve the scattered paper. "He said he'll be a paramedic, right?" "Said" is a loose term. "How can you help anyone if you refuse to speak to them? Just seems rude, to be honest." He fumbled with his notes, almost dropping them again, as he wished being mute meant no one could speak to him either. Defenseless Izuku. Look at him, he's practically shaking in his boots. "Come on, Deku, speak to us." "Yeah, come on already." "Just leave him. If he doesn't want to speak to us, then he's not worth our time." "I heard all he does is study. That's why he's top of the class. And why he's got no friends either." "Ha ha! Is he going to cry?" "Stupid Deku." "Where are you going, Midoriya?" "Run back to your little hidey hole then, Deku." "Hey, what are you doing?" "Speak to us, Midoriya." Midoriya? "It's not that hard, Deku." "Snap out of it. We're not done here yet, bastard." "Midoriya?" "Midoriya?" "Canary." Midoriya blinked, his hand gripping on the table leg. It was solid. Real. Shinso was there holding onto his shoulders, a worried expression covering his face. "Are you all right?" He leaned into the touch of the table, where reality was certain. He nodded weakly. Shinso sat cross-legged in front of him, clearly freaked. "You have a while until the fight starts," he informed him. "Is there something you wanted to talk about?" Siren tweeted softly at Midoriya, hopping onto his knee and cocking her head to one side. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, pushing his hair out of his face. "I think I got lost in thought." "Yeah," Shinso replied, standing up to move to a proper chair. Midoriya followed after a moment's hesitation. "Were you thinking about Bakugo?" Shinso supposed, hitting the nail on the head. Midoriya focused his attention on Siren, who had just landed in front of him on the table. He nodded. "Just beat him up." Midoriya almost laughed. "I'm not kidding. You'd probably be applauded for it. No, you will be applauded for it." "I don't want to beat him up," Midoriya signed. "Yes, you do." Midoriya was smiling now, unable to shake his head to deny this. Siren chirped supportively. You do, Shinso repeated. At this point, it doesn't even matter if you win or lose. Either way, the school simply has to acknowledge you for the hero course. And with you, they'll probably consider me. Right now, the victory you need is the one over whatever the hell is going on in your head. He nodded, still smiling at his friend. Well then, what do I do? For what, the fight? He simply nodded once more. Choose a song that will really blow his fuse. Shinso grinned maniacally. Isn't that a rather bad strategy for someone who is going to literally blow me up? He laughed. You don't get it. Mimic him. Mimic? What? Midoriya frowned, unable to suppress his bewildered smile. You know his quirk, right? Shinso continued as Midoriya nodded in agreement. You know how he works. Then find a song which gives you a similar power to him and use it against him. Beat him in his own game. I don't know if I can beat him. You've come this far, Shinso acknowledged. It can't hurt to try. Midoriya winced. I don't know about that. Oh, come on. Stop twisting my words. Shinso sighed, standing up from his chair, grabbing Siren and plonking her back on his shoulder. She didn't protest. It doesn't matter if you end up in first place anymore, he repeated, trying to drill that fact into his head. Midoriya stood up too, thinking through the various songs he'd practiced for fun over the past few weeks. There was one that... Yes, that's the one. It described Kachan perfectly. But did he really want to risk it? You will have won the moment you start singing. Shinso held out his hand and with a stifled laugh, they did an awkward fist bump. Something that Midoriya had never attempted before in his life. And he very much doubted that Shinso had either. Are you really okay though? Shinso pressed. You don't look too good. Midoriya smiled, sitting back down in his chair. I'm just tired. You look it, Shinso agreed, pulling his own seat around the table so he could sit opposite him. Is it to do with your quirk? He hesitated before giving him an affirmative nod. That last song, the one I used against Todoroki, it was so much more powerful than it should have been. I think it was my emotions. I got worked up, so my power did too, but it really sucked up my energy and Midoriya shook his head, unsure of what he was concluding. I don't know how much my quirk can take. There was a moment of silence before Shinso replied, You've only had it for a few weeks. Of course you'd reach your limits quicker than the hero course students. I think I can manage one more song, said Midoriya confidently. I only need one more anyway. Right. Shinso nodded. Just be careful. Silence fell between them again as Midoriya's mind whirred. I have an idea of what song to use, he smirked after a moment or so. Untangling the wire from his shirt, he leaned over the table and put the headphones on Shinso's head before starting to play the song in question. It took a while before Shinso's grin reached his eyes, but once he reached the chorus, he was almost shaking his head in disbelief. If you can sing that, Shinso told him, returning his headphones, you deserve more than just a dumb medal. Jaku. Bakugo was in the finals of the greatest sporting event in Japan, and his opponent was none other than Deku, the quirkless, mute loser that had been trailing him around like a lost puppy ever since he could remember. But now he wasn't mute, and he wasn't quirkless either, and he certainly wasn't the nobody that Bakugo had become accustomed to kicking aside whenever he got too freaking clingy. He was calling himself Canary, had a quirk that easily matched icy hats, and had yet to be scratched by any of his classmates. Not even the ones that Bakugo had stared at on his first few days of UA with the profound realization that perhaps he wasn't the best. But oh, he had showed them. He'd shown them all. He was at the very top of this damn school. No one was going to stop him from being the best of the best. But then there was Deku! Bakugo kicked the door open to his waiting room, only for his eyes to rest on the faces of two others sitting opposite each other around the table in the center of the room. Hey, what are you two doing here? Bakugo snarled. This is my place to... Waiting room 2. Damn it. Back off, would you? Said the purple-haired imbecile from General Studies, that tired, skeletal-looking guy with the brainwashing quirk. Bakugo gritted his teeth and marched up to him. What the heck do you want, eyebags? I want you to back the hell off, he said, standing up and glaring at him. Do you want me to use my quirk on you? Bakugo didn't dare reply to that question. Instead, he turned his head towards Deku, who had cowered into his chair like he always used to, with his stupid little bird cupped in his hands. Are you going to freaking speak to me now, huh? Bakugo questioned him. Deku simply averted his eyes, stroking the bird gingerly. You better not freeze up on me, he continued, baring his teeth as he ignored eyebags. I want the world to know that you're nothing compared to me. I will beat you at your best, however pathetic that may be. And with that, he turned on his heel and stormed away. If Deku thought he could sing him a little song and everything would be over and done with, then he had another thing coming. Welcome to the final battle of the UA Sports Festival! President Mike cried. In just a moment here, we'll see which first year's gonna on top! Midoriya was already standing in his position opposite Kachan in the arena. He had his headphones on. He could hear the muffled voice of his teacher and the enthusiastic roar of the crowd. But he could also hear the thumping of his own heart as he stared at his childhood friend. The sadistic smile spread across his face and the position of his hands, ready to send that explosive power of his roaring in Midoriya's direction. If he didn't time this right, it would be over in a matter of seconds. Yes! It all comes down to this, folks! It's the top of the hero course! Gunski Bakugo versus the top of General Studies, Izuku Midoriya! This was it. This was what it had all been building up to. Midoriya turned his head to look at the distant face of Shinso in the crowd. He mimicked his grin and turned back to Kachan. Kachan flinched, his smile fading for a moment before returning with a more determined force. Ready! Midoriya activated his microphone and breathed deeply into it, hearing the sound echo across the pitch as his hand hovered over the play button on the device strapped to his arm, suppressing the painful throbbing feeling inside his head. Begin! Midoriya felt his grin grow wider as the music began to swell into being. He relished in the confusion that briefly flickered across Kachan's face. This was not Midoriya's normal type of music. And that's what made it so perfect. As he let the first sound fall from his mouth, he expertly maneuvered himself to evade Kachan's first attack. It was much easier to fight with this song than it had been with Todoroki's. His had been much slower. Not good for a fast-paced battle. He'd barely come out on top of that anyway. A couple of seconds more and he would have been screwed. But now wasn't the time to think back on where he could have gone wrong, or else he would have even more regrets to deal with after messing this up too. Here we go, he began. It's about time that we set it off. He was walking backwards now, easily predicting Kachan's first movements like he had his entire life. He also knew that it wouldn't be long until, like Shinso had said, his fuse would blow and his fighting style would be thrown out of sync as his anger took hold. Midoriya couldn't be sure if it was a strength or a weakness. Midoriya ducked and rolled as another blast was sent his way, re-emerging behind his opponent, about to hit him hard. But he hesitated. He should have hit Kachan around the head. But why did he hesitate? Kachan turned faster than Midoriya could think, attempting to achieve what Midoriya hadn't. With another duck, Midoriya avoided that right hook of his. So predictable. Midoriya could use that. Now he was back to evading as the fury built up in Kacchan's expression. Midoriya should be thanking him. After all, he was the one who taught him how to dodge, if unknowingly. Got me singing like... And his smile returned. Bang, bang! And Kacchan's faded. Bang, bang! He felt the energy begin to run through his very veins. This fire's a weapon! He tried to put some distance between them using the skills he'd innocently picked up on in dance to evade Kacchan further. The power roared towards Midoriya's palms, building up and up until he let go. Won't stop till we're legends. Boom! The fire rippled through the air much like it did for Kacchan's quirk, and it engulfed him as Midoriya was propelled into the air. What's this? Canary's using his quirk to completely copy Bakugo's! President Mike exclaimed in excitement as Kacchan roared out in frustration, failing to suppress his nitrogenous sweat from igniting in the heat that Midoriya sent his way. Bang! Went Midoriya's new power as he sent another explosion at Kacchan. It tossed him off the ground again until he skidded to a halt not far from where Kacchan had been hit. Won't stop till we're legends. Oh, you look furious. Here we go! It's my turn! Bakugo swiveled and threw an explosion of his own at Midoriya. He countered with his own slightly weaker blast, now that the chorus was over. But it didn't matter, because he knew how to deal with a power like this. He'd studied Kacchan's for years. Yeah! Dreaming with the fever to be great was all I ever want. Their combat was faster paced now, evading and counter-attacking, exchanging the crackles and pops of each other's abilities in a fiery game of cat and mouse, leaving scorch marks all across the concrete, and the crowd cheered and yelled beyond the bellowing sound of Midoriya's music. But Kacchan's aim was becoming more precise. His anger just kept on building. Got me singing like... But so was Midoriya's. And the chorus was just about to return, and so with it would the fullest extent of this song's abilities. Bang, bang, this fire's a weapon. Kacchan didn't let him run. This time the blast would just have to be point blank as his power dipped and started to surge up inside him. Bang, bang, we'll stop till we're legends. Kaboom! And the music stopped. Kacchan had grabbed a hold of his arm, pushing his extended palm out of the way so that Midoriya's fire barely skimmed his cheek as he sent his own power straight at his left arm, frying the mechanism of his and Hatsume's invention, burning the wire and searing through the strap. Midoriya tried to leap backwards as President Mike screamed out the result of the hit, but Bakugo didn't let go of his arm. He swung his fist and hit Midoriya square in the jaw. He tumbled to the ground, rolling across the rough concrete painfully. He looked up as Bakugo sneered. His foot crunched down on the most integral part of Midoriya's support item. Is that all you got? He leered and then charged. In panic, Midoriya held up his right hand again, blasting Bakugo as he leapt to his feet. He hadn't expected for Midoriya's power to linger, but it was far weaker than it had been. It could now be easily compared with the fire that Bakugo toyed with in middle school, what he used to threaten rather than attack. Midoriya's cool confidence faded quicker than the song had when it was cut short. Ripping the dangling wire from his headphones, Midoriya somersaulted to avoid another blast. Without the beat of the music, he felt lost. His movements uncoordinated and messy. His head was throbbing. His body felt sluggish. He could barely see straight, let alone keep fighting. Now what? What could he do without his music? Sure, he could activate his quirk without a backing track, no problem, but it was weaker. And moreover, in the stretch of the situation, the lyrics simply didn't come to his mind. Don't you dare fall mute on me again! Bakugo roared. Midoriya was surprised it wasn't amplified by his microphone. Without his singing, Canary's power is completely done for! President Mike shouted across the stadium, but his voice didn't hold its usual excitement. Without his singing, Canary's power is completely done for! President Mike shouted across the stadium, but his voice didn't hold its usual excitement. He just sounded worried. All Midoriya could hear beyond that was a ringing noise. the one which reverberated around him when Kacchan used his quirk. Boom, boom, bang! And now he was being tossed around like a rag doll, none of his dodges successful, the heat kissing his skin like he was right back in middle school. You are nothing, Deku! Boom, boom, bang! You won't be getting on the hero course, and your freakish friend won't either. He caught a glimpse of Shinso up in the stands. He was shouting something. Midoriya couldn't hear anything more than Kacchan's explosions. Boom, boom, bang! But the very image of his moving mouth brought a little spark of determination back from the depths of Midoriya's mind, and boom, boom, bang! And he didn't need music to find a rhythm. He held his hand over his microphone to block out the sound as he shouted back, Don't you dare insult my friend! He spent his whole life being called a villain, whilst you were called a hero. Well, you know what? They got it the wrong way around! He gritted his teeth and let a grin return to his face. He pushed past the limits of his quirk as he started to clap his hands and stomp his feet. He couldn't go on much longer, but he put on a smile like President Mike would, and he kept going anyway. Maybe in some piece of luck greater than what blessed him in Todoroki's match, he could still win this. So he slammed his feet into the ground and clapping his hands close to the microphone by his lips. He couldn't hear much, despite the fact that the music was no longer booming through his headphones. But despite that, it didn't take long until even Kacchan's blasts were drowned out by the deafening sound of a very familiar beat. Buddy, you're a boy, make a big noise. Damn it! Kacchan cried, lunging towards him with another blast. He'd only used this song once before. Every other power he'd utilized in the festival had been heavily practiced and well thought out. To some extent. But this was certainly a spur-of-the-moment decision. And even through his headphones, Midoriya could hear every single member of the audience scream those words, laughing, clapping their hands, stomping their feet, joining in and egging Midoriya on. Singing we. Midoriya slammed his feet into the ground once more, but this time was not like the others. The concrete beneath him cracked and crumbled. Great boulders rose from it, which Midoriya kicked skillfully in Kacchan's direction. We will rock you! Midoriya's feet moved in time to the beat that the stadium provided for him, spitting the words like venom in his opponents. Buddy, surely Kacchan was running out of go like Midoriya was. Wasn't most of his sweat burnt away by Midoriya's earlier song? Just how much stronger had he gotten during his short time in the hero course, since his explosions were last sent in Midoriya's way? But Kacchan continued to roar as Midoriya's head persisted to throb. He knew he was still singing, but the words were simply falling from his mouth at this point. He felt like he was fighting for his life, rather than just for a competition. We will rock you! One of Midoriya's boulders whizzed past his face, cutting into it and leaving behind a nasty red mark. We will rock you! He was thrown a distance away, forced to be on the defensive like he'd been with Kirishima as he struggled to destroy the pieces of rubble that Midoriya kicked and punched in his direction. Midoriya's knuckles were raw from impacting the concrete, but the physical pain meant nothing to him compared to what Kacchan had put him through in the past. He still bore those scars. Mentally. This was him, fighting through them. Somebody better put you back into your place! And Kacchan screamed, We will rock you! He leapt up onto one of the discarded boulders and propelled himself into the air. We will rock you! Midoriya tried his hardest, frantically tossing the rock at the explosive hero student as he spun himself around in the air, avoiding every single projectile. We will rock you! Kacchan spun himself into a swirling whirlwind of smoke and fire as Midoriya threw up the best shield he could. We will rock you! Boom! Shinso stood up, leaning over the wall that barricaded him from the arena, desperate to see through the thick cloud of smoke and rubble that had been tossed up by Bakugo's last explosion, while the crowd stopped singing and cried out in panic. It was clear whose side they were on. Present Mikey didn't even take the opportunity to say that he once again couldn't see properly the end of the match. He instead sounded frantic and fearful as he questioned if they, meaning Midoriya, were okay down there. Shinso's heart was in his mouth. Even Siren had shut up. It took longer than Shinso would have liked for the dust to settle and the scene to become apparent. Midoriya's headphones were in pieces, strewn across the pitch along with the rest of his makeshift support item. They weren't in a much better state than the arena itself, which looked more like a war ground than the result of a simple sports festival match. It had been completely annihilated. As for the competitors, the winner was clear. In the center of the arena, grasping the top of the other's shirt as he hung limp in his grip, was Bakugo. He was screaming something at Midoriya, who was unconscious. Moments later, Midnight appeared through the clouds of dust, pulling at her hero costume to send her fragrance in Bakugo's direction, so he, too, fell to the ground, dropping Midoriya's damaged self harshly onto the wrecked ground in the process. Midoriya was knocked unconscious, Midnight explained to the crowd, raising her hand in the air. That means Bakugo is the winner. The crowd wasn't quite as enthusiastic as they perhaps might have been if it had been anyone but Midoriya falling short of victory. Shinso gripped the edge of the wall. Midoriya had been so close. So close. And with that incredible display of power, the final match is officially over. He didn't seem too happy about it, but someone needed to announce the results. That means, despite an extremely close battle, the first-year champion from the UA Sports Festival is Katsuki Bakugo from Class 1A. Unbiased. Eraserhead snapped at him. Good job to all our competitors! Come on, Simon, Shinso muttered. He grabbed Midoriya's rucksack after tossing the remainder of his notes inside and ran past the rest of Class 1C, ignoring their mutterings and worried gazes as he went. Midoriya could have sworn that he had never felt so exhausted in his life. When his consciousness finally flooded back to him, a brief moment of bewilderment led his tired mind to believe he was back in middle school, waking up early for another tedious day, even after the last had led to him running home as fast as his aching legs could carry him. Opening his eyes, this thought was quickly corrected by the sight of the white sterile room and the blue curtain which separated his bed from whatever was behind it. Ignoring the protests of his muscles, he sat upright with a soft groan. The curtain was quickly thrown open. "You're awake," Shinso exclaimed with a relieved smile. "You were unconscious for way longer than you should have been, Midoriya." He sighed, rubbing his temples as if to dispel the stress. "What?" Midoriya groaned, still struggling to get his head around what had just happened and why he was there. He reached up to rub his eyes, but his fingers made contact with the many plasters that covered his face and the bandage wrapped tightly around his forehead. "You took quite a hit," Recovery Girl explained as she joined Shinso on Midoriya's side of the curtain. Unraveling Midoriya's fingers, she poured a selection of energy gummies into his palm for him to eat. "Although I think you wouldn't have lasted much longer in that match, despite Bakugo's attack. Quirk exhaustion is very serious, and I don't expect for you to be dismissing it so readily ever again. Do you understand me?" she ordered. "Yes, ma'am," Midoriya replied before shoving most of the gummies in his mouth at once. Siren then zoomed into view. She hovered before him, pleading frantically. "I'm sorry," Midoriya explained as soon as he'd managed to swallow the gummies. "Calm down, Siren. It's okay." She didn't seem very satisfied, but landed on the bed beside him anyway. "I've healed you enough for you to walk," Recovery Girl continued, which sounded slightly ominous. "So I'm going to tell them that they can start the award ceremony soon. I'll give you 5 minutes." She smiled before disappearing from view. Midoriya turned back to Shinso. "How long have I been out?" he questioned after popping the last few sweets in his mouth. "About 20 minutes. Midoriya almost choked. 20 minutes?" Shinso nodded with raised eyebrows. "But don't worry, they haven't been waiting for you long. They had to fix the arena first anyway. You and Bakugo really did a number on it. And each other. Is he okay? Midoriya whispered in reply. Yeah, you came out a lot worse than he did, Shinso explained. And your headphones are definitely dead. Midoriya laughed meekly as he stroked Siren's feathers. Then he stopped, wide-eyed, and turned to Shinso again. Oh my god! I came in second place! Shinso blinked at him. Yeah. I almost beat Kanchan! Yeah, I guess. Shinso laughed at Midoriya's excitement. Midoriya lunged forward and grabbed a hold of Shinso's shoulders. Do you think they'll let us on the hero course? Shinso hesitated for a moment. Before that manic smile of his returned to his expression, he shrugged off Midoriya's hands and held out his fist. Siren quickly flew up to land on it. With a laugh, Midoriya gave him a fist bump with Siren singing happily on top. Next stop, Shinso grinned. And together they said, Hero course!